From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there. Welcome to another show. Okay, kids, calm down now. Let's quiet down, kids. Let's gather around the TV set because one of your favorite topics is on Chicago Newsroom today. We're going to talk about mommy and daddy's pensions. There's almost nothing we've talked about more often on this show, and for a simple reason. It's because the pension mess just affects absolutely everybody. That's true if you're a retiree expecting your pension checks that you thought you were working for the past 30 years, or a younger worker who thought maybe you were going to get the same deal that dad had, or maybe you're a taxpayer who's not all that happy about the fact that you're being asked to pay for it all, especially after your own company dumped you into a crappy little 401k that won't pay the grocery bills when you're 70. And of course, then there's the people who are most severely affected, the politicians, like maybe the aldermen who for the first time in their careers are going to have to cast a real, actual, impossibly difficult vote to choose between their public service employees and their taxpayers. So on and on it goes. How did we get into this mess? It wasn't as though we couldn't really see it coming. I mean, we've been hearing screams about underfunding pensions for, decades probably. And the question is, are there any logical fixes now, today, that everyone can at least get something out of it and end up being relatively unharmed? Or is the idea of a pension just some dumb, antiquated concept that belongs on the trash heap of history along with the New Deal, child labor laws, affirmative action, and all that other stuff? Well, we got three of Chicago's media ranking experts on the show today. We got John Byrne here from the Chicago Tribune, a story about pensions on the front page of the story. Front page of the Tribune today. Mark Brown, columnist, Sun-Times. Glad to have you back here again, Mark. And Greg Hinz from Crain Chicago Business. You're going to be actually on a pension panel next week at the City Club of Chicago, I believe, right? Yes. So we've got some pension expertise here. And I guess maybe we can start with you, John. You cover City Hall. So what is the plan that's currently on the docket, and what does it actually do, if you can summarize it?
Famous last words, yeah, right.
Make it sexy, too.
Yeah, right? I can take my shirt off while I talk
Remember,
about
all the kiddies are watching, and they have a short attention span.
So the mayor's plan, which he says is the fair plan that's going to be give a little from everybody, is that he's wants to raise property taxes, a vote that, of course, the city council will have to take to raise property taxes, and
they're very eager to do that too.
And they just can't wait to take that vote. And then at the same time, he'll be cutting benefits this is for the laborers and the municipal pension funds, be cutting benefits and freezing COLAs and things like that down the road. I mean, this is clearly just a drop in the bucket compared to the stuff he's still facing with fire and police pensions and the teachers union, but this is his first gambit to try to actually address
kind
something.
of a cut the baby in half sort of an effort. So politically, what are the upsides and downsides of this? I mean, is this a bold move for Rahm Emanuel?
Yeah,
you see it that way?
It's a pretty bold move. He's advocating a pretty big property tax increase. I guess it's not a bold move in as much as you just can't escape it anymore.
Right,
Everybody's kind of on to this as the problem that has to be dealt with, and he wants to be known as the guy that's dealt with it. So
he could have pushed it off until after the election.
No, he couldn't.
I mean, they just increased his borrowing cap. They could have borrowed for a year and waited and dealt with it in 2016.
I don't think so. He said when he ran that he was going to deal with this problem this term and make tough decisions, and kicking it off is only going to make it infinitely worse. I mean, in theory, he could have done it. This is one of these little public charades that's been going on for decades.
Has it, though?
Yeah, it has. We've known for a very long time that we, the state, the city, the county, the CTA, the Board of Education, have not been putting in enough money into retirement systems to pay the promised benefits. Now, for a while, we kind of got away from it into Well, into the first part of the last decade, for instance, we probably had 70% of the money that we would need to pay off, which isn't too bad. But then the benefits got juiced a little bit. Returns on the stock market went down. We had a recession, and all of a sudden, what was having maybe 75 cents of every dollar you needed turned into 50 cents or 40 cents, and bam, the crisis is here. And at the same time, the unions didn't start talking about it, in part because they wanted money for raises. So money that could have gone to pay for pensions went to raises. And now the due bill is being presented, and it's being presented at a time when, as you quite appropriately said, everybody in the private sector, for the most part, has waved bye-bye to their pensions. I mean, their employers dump these things and push them into 401ks. So the question is, how long could people in the private sector, public sector, hang on to a pension? And if so, if they can't hang on, how bad's the deal going to be?
Well, I do think it's interesting to, I went back to a show we did a few months ago and looked up this is the Chicago teachers. Now, of course, that's a big one that is, as we say, is still lumbering toward us. But the Chicago Teachers Pension Fund, they got 60,000 teachers in it. Their average benefit in 2011 was $41,500. In 2001, that pension fund was completely in balance. It was solvent. It was ready to go. It was shortly after that there was a property tax allocation that was wired right into the teachers' pension fund.
Yeah, what they did is they wanted money to pay for other stuff,
right.
So they quit putting in what they were supposed to put in, and guess what? It went south in a hurry.
So there were no employee contributions at all to the CTPF or the pension fund from 1996 to 2005.
Right.
And then the last couple of years, of course, we've invented the new euphemism, the pension holiday. So, and that's just teachers. I mean, the same thing's happening with everybody else. So, I mean, is it unfair to say that people who have contracts, who had deals that put their own money in, who were ready to go, and everything looked like it was okay, that the politicians just basically screwed them?
No, it's not unfair to say that, and if I were a member of one of these pension funds, I think I would have a pretty good gripe, and I'd certainly be yelling my head off. But this didn't happen in a vacuum. All this was in public. Everybody knew about it. Do you remember outraged press conferences by union leaders in the early 2000s demanding that this situation be reversed and that the money go here? No, they didn't, because the unions kind of tacitly winked at it.
That's one of my questions on my list right here. We'll get to that.
I believe, I mean, for one, I think they always thought that this constitutional guarantee was their backstop. So even if they let it, the whatever governmental unit we're talking about, whether it's the state, the city, the schools, where if they let it slide, well, in the end, they'll have to make us whole. So,
right.
And as Greg pointed out before, I mean, there are actual real situations where the unions said, okay, skip the pension payment, or we'll go along with, Daley put in this, reduced formula for paying in. They didn't just stop paying. They changed the law. It's all very legal. They changed the law so they didn't have to pay in as much every year, and under the fiction that would be enough. Well, it wasn't enough.
Especially, as Greg said, when the economy tanks and you go through 2008, and then the value of everything else drops. But I guess the reason I wanted to have all of you guys here today is I just want to try to get some sense of what logically can be done. I mean, you're smart guys, you've been around for a while. So where do we go from here? Do we just have to say that everybody has to lose now?
Well, that depends on your view of the law. The state took the first steps to change the pension fund. The legislature passed some stuff this winter that affects the state pension funds, and there are a series of lawsuits pending that headed to the Illinois Supreme Court on exactly this question. Once somebody is hired, can you change the rate of accrual of their pension, or do they continue to get the same kind of benefits they've been getting for the next 30 or 40 years and into retirement? A majority of the legislature said, we think this is problematic enough to take it to the court. Mike Madigan, the Speaker of the House, who usually knows how to count members as well as judges, says he thinks this is going to pass muster, but we don't know. But that's the threshold question. Can you reduce the benefits as part of a bigger package? If you can't, then we're back to square one, and we, the taxpayers, are really going to take it. If the court rules that you can reduce the benefits, then some kind of shared pain, like the mayor is talking about, comes into play.
But there's going to have to be some sort of new revenue, clearly, and it's the mayor's putting his eggs in this property tax basket. He said the income tax is a no-go as far as he's concerned. Of course, Quinn is saying the property tax is
a no-go.
Is a no-go. And so, they're going to find Chicago taxpayers are going to take it somehow.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
just a question of how much at this
Yeah, I
point.
mean, to answer your question a little more directly, Ken, nobody here is a saint. Everybody here is wearing gray.
Right. That's a good way of putting it.
We in Chicago, whether we want to admit it or not, pay relatively low property taxes.
Right.
If you're a
Hold
homeowner.
on. That guy's from Crain's who just said that. Just want you to know that.
Well,
yeah.
we do.
The guy from the Sun-Times says that too, but as I pointed out, I live outside the city.
I mean, the business guys get whacked a little bit because of this classification system that the first Mayor Daley set up 30 or 40 years ago. So that's one of the things on the scale. The other thing that's on the scale is the big money in the pension funds. The big cost that's really driven them up is that the cost of living increases that everybody gets each year are excessive. They get a minimum. The way it's written now, it's 3% a year. Compounded.
But
now,
not police and fire, they're not compounded.
Correct.
Which is why they're saying,
Correct.
where are you going to find the money? We don't get a compounded
But what that means, though, is that in a high inflation era, like in the 60s or 70s, that would be a pretty bad deal for workers. The last 10 or 15 years, that's a great deal.
3% looks really good, doesn't it?
So they're effectively increasing the real value of their pensions every year. So that's on the other side of the scale with the low property taxes in Chicago.
So then, of course, the unions, Karen Lewis certainly leading the charge, says, hey, you've got to come up with more revenue. That you're not going to come after us looking for cuts until you put something on the table. And then the question becomes, how do you do this? Well, obviously property taxes is the first go-to thing. Everybody thinks that's it. But there have been these other ideas, as you mentioned, an income tax, but the mayor is totally against it. Right. The idea of taxing
the services.
The
ROM tax,
right.
It's something that's...
Now, this morning we see that Carrie Austin has dropped off the wagon. She's
still going to vote for the property tax.
She is, but she's talking about a garbage collection fee, I mean, I don't understand. What I don't understand about a garbage collection fee is that's just a property tax increase.
So her point is that for lots of people in the city, it's easier to come up with $10 each month than it is to come up with $120 in a lump sum for a property tax bill. That you have it right. It's her argument is that for her constituents, it's harder to save $120 than it is to say, I have the $10 this month.
Yeah.
And to
so
pay that
would you
out.
rather go to the dentist once a year and get that tooth pulled, or would you rather once a month go and get your teeth filled or something? I mean, writing that $10 check is
right. No, I mean
it reminds you.
It does, but there's the idea is that for some people it's just when you're trying to make ends meet throughout the year, it's harder to sock away that $10 every month and then not touch it until the end of the year. It's just difficult to do, she says.
Well, it's also difficult to collect the money every month. So
that's
not
going
to
to cost.
make any
Right,
sense.
you're going to get $7 out of that 10.
I mean, you can do it on a.
Right.
In the suburbs, they do it quarterly. And I tell you, it's it's an outrageous, backdoor property tax when they suddenly say, oh, we're going to assess you a garbage fee for what you thought you were paying for, and you were, but you pay for it.
And Alderman Austin probably at the end of the day just wants to be able to turn to her constituents and say, I had an idea. I'm still going to vote yes for the property tax.
One of my favorite phrases about government that came from Louis XIV, Louis XIV of finance minister who
History lesson, kids.
who once famously said that the art of taxation is to pluck the goose that squawketh the least. It's still true.
It's still true today. Well then, as long as we're talking about the goose that squawketh the least, wouldn't that be a big fat casino in the middle of downtown Chicago? Apparently I'm now learning that if that happens, we're not going to really get a lot of money out of it.
We'll get some money out of it, but you know, you'd have to be dead and not realize that there's a lot more casinos in America than there used to be. So the payoff isn't as big as it was. There'll be some money there, but it
wouldn't pay off that CTU fund, though.
Well, it all helps. I mean, maybe the tax increase will be $40 a year rather than $50 a year. I mean, it's all money in the pot. Yeah. I mean, so would rating the TIF fund, the tax income financing pot, which is another favorite on the aldermanic side. There's probably some money to be there, but in municipal finance, there's nothing more solid or stable than a property tax. It solves all needs.
And the TIF really is almost like because of the way it's got to be distributed after you pull stuff out of it. It's almost like a one-time. It's a one-time thing because it's going to go to schools. It's going to go to all this other stuff and get sucked up pretty quick.
So, just sticking with the casino for a minute. The way that would work is that it would be a 50-50 split with the state. Is that's
well,
the
it depends.
new plan?
It depends which version of the bill you want to talk about. For years, they tried to pass a Chicago casino as part of a big package. You know, boats for downstate and slots for the tracks and everything else, and it didn't stall. So the latest version is there's one bill, just a boat for Chicago, or just a casino for Chicago. And instead of the city owning it under this proposal, because the mayor's always said he wanted it would be the state would own it and split the thing 50-50. I don't know if it's going to get anywhere, but it's pending.
Okay, all right. So, all of this, of course, is political. Everything is political, but this is really political. And you guys have written some great stuff. All of you have written some great stuff about Bruce Rauner and how Bruce Rauner figures into this. And those robocalls that went out the other day really were a punch in the gut for Rahm Emanuel. And it's just, I mean, actually, I think both of you wrote similar things about how, well, maybe Rahm Emanuel isn't tacitly in Rauner's camp anymore after what he just did.
Hey, some people think it's the greatest Machiavellian play of all. That this puts pressure on Quinn to sign a bill that Quinn doesn't really want to sign. You can tie yourself in knots on that. And believe me, I'm still kind of like looking at it. Who's really trying to do what here?
Yeah,
but,
it's like Hillary Clinton.
I think it's not good for Rahm to have, a guy out there campaigning about, how this is, bad for Chicago taxpayers.
Right.
And it puts together, it groups together people who, the elections are only 3 months apart. And
yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful political story. Everybody has kind of blundered here. Quinn's blunder was everybody knew that the Chicago pension thing was going to come up this spring because the city faces some financial cliffs that it's going to have to start paying a whole bunch of money that it doesn't have.
And Quinn was put on earth to solve the problem, he said.
There you go. And so says Pat Quinn. And you wouldn't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that property taxes increases were going to be part of the mix. That's what the city was going to put on the table. So what does the governor do? In his State of the State speech, he presents himself as the great hero, the savior of homeowners. He's going to send everybody a property tax refund check that's going to arrive, coincidentally, just before the election, I suspect. From Pat Quinn, the next week, the mayor proposes his pension thing. It includes a property tax, and it puts Quinn in a no-win, lose position because either he lets Rahm Emanuel take back with the other hand the money that Pat Quinn just gave him, at least in the city of Chicago, or he blocks a needed improvement and Chicago goes over the cliff financially.
Yeah. We were just getting a good laugh out of this Snead thing this morning. There's this picture of 3 generations of Chicago mayors. We got Rich Daley sitting around the table the other night over at Gibson's. There's our mayor right now, Rahm Emanuel, and there's a future mayor, Pat Daley, just the son, just sitting there waiting for his chance. But I was just wondering if maybe Mayor Daley said to Rahm, What's the matter with you? Don't you understand you don't raise taxes until 6 months after you get reelected? Why are you doing this beforehand? I mean, it's kind of politically stupid.
Well, well, Daley set a time bomb trap for him.
Yeah, he sure did.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he said hundreds of
One
them
of many,
actually,
yes.
one of many. But he said this one that you got to take care of the police, fire, and the teachers' pensions before the end of this year, or get the legislature to let you put it off. And the legislature, he tried that last year. They said,
Or
"Go
borrow,
away, man."
borrow for a year. I mean, he could borrow for a year and deal with it after the
Let's put it
election.
this way, Mayor Davis. Here's the choices you go into re-election. Would you rather run for re-election on the platform that I sucked it up and made the hard decision and pushed through the property tax increase that we did not, or I kicked the can down the road again and watched Chicago debt be downgraded not only from 2 levels of to junk, and we're the laughing stock of the world?
No,
You're assuming he's running against somebody, first of all. You're assuming he has an opponent other than the Shaw brother, but, True.
Well, before the cameras rolled, ladies and gentlemen, there was a little bit of loose talk around the table here about, what's her name, the woman who's over at the county? Toni Preckwinkle, that's her name, yeah. It's just kind of a weird thing to watch this. It's like she's not running, but, maybe she is. All right, let me just put the question straight out. Let's forget all the political machinations about whether or not she is or does run. Could Toni Preckwinkle beat Rahm Emanuel?
Yes.
Could she really do it?
She could.
Really? Under what circumstances?
She could. Under the circumstances of, there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the mayor. I mean, the African American community in particular is deeply dissatisfied with the mayor, and there are lakefront liberals who are also unhappy with the mayor, who Preckwinkle would certainly appeal to. I mean, I don't think she'd be favored, but I think if things broke the right way, she could beat him. She certainly has a better opportunity than anyone else I can come up with off the top of my head.
Well, I guess my question is two-pronged. First of all, how in the world could she possibly beat Rahm Emanuel? But let's just assume she did. Could she be a better mayor than Rahm Emanuel? Let's look at that. Let's just look at that. I mean, really, come on. It's like viewers will know that Rahm Emanuel doesn't usually get a very positive seat at this table. He's often criticized at this table, but there's something about him that I think people like to dislike him, right? But
Sure.
that's a different thing.
He caters to
Yeah,
that.
he kind of does.
enjoys
Right.
the black hat
And-
some of the time, I think.
Is Chicago ready to trade in this kind of not so likable money guy for this kind of school mom who is going to lecture us about sugar, candy, and water and soft drinks and stuff?
I agree with my colleague here. If somebody else is running against him, he could lose. It's a possibility, but I don't think the odds are very good. There's stuff in Toni Preckwinkle's record that is certainly exploitable. She'd have to depend on the African American community as her base, and there simply isn't the black vote in this city that there was in Harold Washington's days.
The demography has changed.
He has probably most important. He has all the money in the world to spend. He probably can't do much to change his image at this point, but he can do a lot to change people's perspective of her image.
Well, yeah,
He can define her.
Yeah, he certainly can do that. Yeah. So a couple of things that are kind of in the news, just changing subjects here right now, because there are a couple of really great juicy things, political things in the news right now. This plastic bag ban that looks like it's moving forward in the city council. Does this make sense to anybody? Is this the right way to go?
What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to achieve an actual important environmental initiative, or are you trying to achieve being seen as a city that takes the steps that are attractive to young people who you want to come in and live and work in your city? If you're trying to do the former, it probably doesn't do a whole lot, I don't think. I mean, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but
when I worked briefly in Mayor Daley's press office, in the dark corners, we had this joke that our administration is founded on the rock-solid principle of good public relations. And I think that that's basically what a plastic bag ban does.
You look at what Emmanuel's trying. You know, Emmanuel he wants to desperately wants to attract young, educated workers to ride bikes on protected bike lanes and work at 1871 downtown.
Everybody gets
more than that. He wants the businesses to be attracted to the city, and this is like become one more irritant to them. You know.
I kind of like it. I kind of liken this to the divvy situation. Is it going to be a panacea for the world? No. Does it put the city morally in kind of the right direction?
The moral on the right side of history.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as somebody who worked in the Department of Environment, it's such a complicated issue because the paper bags have their own footprint that is just almost as bad as the plastic, but you don't want to ban the paper bags because they're compostable, although they're not composted. So you end up with this kind of weird combination, the thing where you pick out one and you just kind of ban that. But anyway, I don't know. So Democratic Convention, are we going to get the Democratic Convention in Chicago?
Yeah, maybe. They left the door open for it.
Really?
Yeah, they left the door open for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think if I were, let me put it this way, I'm sure the mayor, if DNC came and really asked Ron to do it, he'd do it. He loves the stage, and this is a wonderful stage.
Yeah.
The question is,
why would they
after 8 years of president from Chicago with mixed popularity ratings, would you want to go to Chicago for the Democrats?
Yeah. I mean, it just seems like an odd thing for me.
Why would they want NATO? I mean, it's a popularity thing. It's a big stage for Chicago. We get to have shots of the lakefront on the TV.
Yeah. I do have to say, though, and I think Mark's in the same situation, having been to any number of conventions in the last 25 years, I'm tired, with all due respect, I'm tired of going to little places like Charlotte and Tampa. Where everything, you have to drive 50 miles to get anywhere. Hold it in a city.
Right.
Yeah, in a real city. Okay, we got 1 minute left. Does it make any sense for the people of Illinois who are being told all the time that our state is bankrupt to pony up $100 million for the Obama Library?
No.
No? No.
Not when there ought to be a lot of rich people out there that are, I mean, honestly, the donors that are willing to put that up usually. So
I mean, Rahm Emanuel, that was his job, was raising lots of money.
That whole thing is weird. Why did the speaker do that?
Right. And did anybody know that was in the hopper? That it just, I mean,
suddenly the Obama's commission that's looking for all this. They claimed they didn't ask the speaker to do this, but who knows? I mean, this is above my pay grade, as my father would have said. A little wink and a nod and a whisper, and who knows what the speaker does? Why he does?
This thing that they did with taking the vote when the Republicans weren't there, wasn't there an adult in the room who could have said, "This is going to blow up on us. Let's not do it this way"?
Unless the speaker, where did I read that the speaker wants the Republicans to now come out and try to shoot this down to anger
That's my only theory.
African American. Did I read that in your comment?
I can't
remember where I read it, but the speaker's hoping that they'll stand up and shoot this thing down.
Three-dimensional chess game going on. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll leave it right there so that you can make your own decision about whether you want to pony up $100 million for the Obama Library in Chicago. I want to thank all three of you. What a great conversation today. John Byrne from the Chicago Tribune, Mark Brown from Chicago Sun-Times, and Greg Hinz of Crain's Chicago Business. Great to have you all here. Hope you come back again sometime. You've been watching Chicago Newsroom. It's a community service of CAN TV. You can watch us on TV all the time, and you can go to this address right here to watch us on YouTube, or you can subscribe on iTunes. We tell you that every week. Hope you'll do some of those things because we need your company. I'm Ken Davis. We'll be back again next week. That's a threat. We will be back right here next week at this desk, and hope you'll watch us here on CAN TV on Chicago Newsroom. Thanks. Bye.